A very good evening and a warm welcome to our distinguished guests, delegates, and friends. Today, we have assembled here to discuss on cloud computing in the government. Cloud computing provides a tremendous scope of speeding up the development and rollout of e-governance applications, while increasing government ICT efficiency. Now, even the Government of India is planning to launch a national cloud initiative, GI Cloud, to help them in leveraging cloud computing for effective delivery of e-services. While most of the countries like US, UK, Japan, Australia, Singapore are making rapid stride in the adoption of cloud in the government space, the adoption of rate in India is still low. To take the discussion forward, I would now like to invite Mr. Jeff Gold, CEO and Director of Research, SafeGov. Ms. Reenu Buddhiraja, Senior Director and HOD E-Governance. Dr. Neeta Verma, Deputy Director General, National Informatics Center. And Dr. Ravi Gupta, Editor-in-Chief, eGov magazine. I would now like to request Dr. Ravi Gupta to facilitate the dignitaries with bouquets. Now, Mr. Ravi Gupta will take forward with his presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ankush. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to have very eminent people in the room, both as speakers and as panelists and audience, to discuss about cloud and government and how cloud is like changing the world and it can change the government. And we have the honor of having experience of India. We have a Department of IT and NIC being represented by very eminent people here. And Jeff is here with us from his experience from US, Europe, and across globally, how cloud is shaping the whole debate regarding government and IT. So before we start that, just as a starter, I will give a brief intro on ILETS. Many of you know about us, but a brief PPT would be a good idea. So vision of ILETS is to be a leading player in creating thought leadership platforms, online, print, events, and research to evangelize role of technology in government, education, health, and related sectors. So the mission is to help the technology innovators to connect with new customers and to help emerging technology usage segments find appropriate solutions to their problems. So we were established in 1997 as CSDMS, Center for Science, Development and Media Studies, and ILETS is a sister organization working in this field of ICT in governance, education, and health. So we aim to influence policy makers at national, state, district, and also at international levels, and practitioners in the usage of ICTs through grassroots projects for proof of concept and through monthly magazines, portals, conferences, workshops, and training programs. So this is a brief highlights of our journey across last 15, 16 years. We have been doing a magazine called I4D, which was world's first magazine on ICT for development, and e-governance magazine on e-education and e-health. And we have been like organizing conferences across Asia called e-Asia. We have been to Bangkok, Putrajaya, Kuala Lumpur, Colombo, Dhaka. So these are our leading flagship initiatives, these magazines, which are first not only in India, but across Asia. And these are our some of our flagship events: E-India, E-Asia, World Education Summit, E-Odisha, E-Maharashtra, Secure IT, E-Governance, Knowledge Exchange, State Education Summits, PSU Summit, and many others. These are the locations like we have been doing across events in India and outside India. And these are our glimpses of some of our events, and we have a unique honor of having a stamp released by Bangladesh government on our event eAsia, released by the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. So these are our glimpses of our various other events, and with eminent thought leaders from all across states and central government organizations. And we have a firm belief that ICT can help eliminating many of the social problems in India in the field of governance, healthcare, and education. And we are looking at creating thought leadership and awareness in these areas. So with these words, I think I will proceed to just saying that these are the eminent organizations we have been working in the last 15, 16 years. And it's again a great honor and a privilege to have you all for this exciting discussion we are going to have on cloud computing and government with all of you. Thank you so much. Without much ado, I will invite Renu Budhi Rajaji, who is a Senior Director and HOD Governance at Department of Electronics and IT, Government of India. And she is leading the cloud initiative at DIT. So it's a, let's hear from her that what is the thought process happening on these areas at the DIT. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening to all of you. Thank you, Ravi. I think it's an honor, it's a privilege to be here in this gathering and to share what Government of India is attempting to do in the area of cloud computing. Now, we just heard we just heard a few minutes back that internationally countries, US, UK, Australia, Singapore, Korea, they've already started cloud in a big way. In fact, they have their cloud policies and strategies in place. And they have their objectives very clear. If we look at these strategies, we see that cost is one of the important aspects which they're trying to address through cloud computing. That is where you see a lot of focus happening in terms of hybrid clouds, public clouds, accompanying many challenges which come along with. So while these initiatives are happening, we were also trying to look at the kind of applications which are being put on cloud. And while you do see application profiling, data classification happening, primarily we saw that it is the non-critical applications, the low-risk applications which are initially being attempted at the public clouds. And what we see is software as a service, infrastructure as a service. I mean, they are moving with software, collaboration softwares and all, taking a lead. Now, looking at all this, I just wanted to take a minute and share, as far as India is concerned, our journey into cloud computing started by trying to see what is it under the National E-Governance Plan that we've laid across the country. And how do we optimally utilize what has been set up? There's a huge infrastructure in terms of data centers across the country. We have 4 national data centers, 3 already available from NIC, the 4th one on the way. We have state data centers in every state and UT. We also have a lot of NIC server farm areas, the data centers, mini data centers. Even the states have their own data centers. There are a lot of private data centers across the country. So there's a huge infrastructure which has been put up across the country. But is this optimally being utilized? So the very first challenge for us when we started looking at cloud was, how do we see what are the new technologies which will enable us to fully utilize this infrastructure? Because if you look at the various projects under the National E-Governance Plan, whether you talk about income tax, excise, MCR, whatever it is, they all have been designed for peak loads. But the peak loads are not going to be permanent. So if that is so, there is a huge underutilization of the infrastructure in the non-peak loads. So there was a need felt in terms of utilization from this aspect also. Now if you look at the applications which are rolled out across the country, you have almost what we've seen is 27 versions of one application across the country. Of course, because India, every state is a country in itself, so they have their own requirements, their own language, customization, process requirements. But at the same time, as we now see, the new technologies like multi-tenancy in the cloud can enable us to move into a single instance, single database schema into that roadmap. So the idea and objective is, how do we move into this? How do we see that there is a consolidation not only from the infrastructure but also from the applications perspective? And third, of course, as we all see, there are huge procurement cycles in the government. I mean, even if somebody, any department wants to bring out a software, a simple software, the development for which could be just 3 months. However, the entire cycle of preparing a DPR, identifying a consultant, going into an RFP, bid process, and finally getting into the development, into the niche area, which is their domain area, it takes more than a year or so. So is there a way, agile way of service delivery? Can I reduce this cycle? And I have something which we say the utility-based services. Can I have something the way I have the electricity and water billing? And somebody tells me, okay, this is the infrastructure, this is secure, this is how you'll be getting it. And this, I can be up and running in the next 2 months, 3 months or something. So if you look at in government, these have been important concerns when we started looking at cloud. Incidentally, cost is also an additional factor, I would say. But the objectives emerging from the optimum utilization. Because what we see is Indian scenario is quite different if you look at from the way infrastructure has been laid across by other countries. If you see USA, they are strong in compliance, in regulations, and they actually leverage the private by putting the necessary contractual security, all sorts of norms, and they work in that direction. So it is not that they put up their infrastructures, they own the infrastructures. Whereas if you see in India, the journey has been in laying down the government infrastructures across the country. So the way the cloud has to be handled, the way things have to be addressed, while there are a lot of benefits, but it has the other side also. The benefits in terms of a lot of cloud challenges that we see from the security, privacy. If you are actually putting up in your data centers and you also have location-based cloud services, the challenges get reduced further. So with these objectives, what happened is, before government could come up with a holistic approach, we saw sporadic initiatives happening across the country. We saw states which are very progressive, who want to work with the new technologies, immediately started with the virtualization. They started seeing how with just 1 or 2 physical servers, I can meet the requirements of for small applications of multiple departments. So that's how the whole thing started. We have, of course, Neeta is going to be sharing her views and they are, in fact, into the virtualization and now into the cloud at the national data centers level. So even they started working on this, considering that there is a requirement and there is a need for this particular thing. In fact, their R&D, we also started with R&D on the open source cloud. We have a Meghdoot cloud platform by CDAC developed. So we also did some pilots with various private players. We did some POCs with multiple cloud technologies at the live state data centers in the production environment. The objective was to try and see what are the issues per se before you take up such a major initiative for a country. Issues with respect to interoperability, issues with respect to portability, because if I have to build a cloud architecture for a country, I need to see today, is it possible for one cloud management solution to work with the other? Can I get the elasticity across the cloud? What are the issues? What are the concerns? Where are we today? And after how many years do I see this interoperability happening? So these are some of the issues, learnings which went into building an architecture for the country. So with all these as a background, Government of India, right at the policy level, whether it's the national telecom policy, whether it's the national IT policy, there are very clear statements and commitments from the government to leverage cloud computing. And DIT per se, Department of Electronics and IT, to give shape to these policies, to actually get into the implementation mode, set up 2 committees. We call the working groups and the task forces. Now, one working group which has been set up under the chairmanship of Chris Gopalakrishnan, CEO Infosys, now President CII, is to look at the regulatory legal aspects in the proliferation of cloud and how India can be seen as a hub for the cloud computing. So this is to see what is the ecosystem requirement, right from the taxation, right from the, I would say, the cloud parks per se, or you talk about the power requirements, or if you want to export cloud services from India, or you want to bring the various multinationals setting up clouds in the country. So what are the legal issues? What are the changes you need to bring in the IT Act? What are those cross-border aspects, the jurisdiction issues? So how do we address? What is it that we do if I want to allow data moving across outside the country? So there have been deliberations. Of course, they are yet to come up with the report. Now, the other, which I'll be spending a little time on, the other initiative is a task force was parallelly set up to see how government can adopt cloud in a big way. And this started as a part, it has started as a part of the National E-Governance Plan. And the idea is, but of course, the 2 groups are going to work in tandem, because what we get as an input from the from the working group will be used by the government when they are addressing the cloud services for the country. So this task force, after several rounds of meetings, which had participation of industry, has come up with what we call the 2 reports. One is the Cloud Strategy Direction Paper, and the second is the Cloud Implementation Roadmap for government as a user of cloud computing. In fact, these reports subsequently also have been discussed with a couple of industry associations at length, and we are really happy for the kind of inputs which have been given to ensure that it's a fair playing field for even the private and the government. Because it's extremely important that if a policy says that you should have cloud-ready applications, or if a policy says that tomorrow you should leverage the cloud-enabled applications like infrastructure as a service and all, now where is that infrastructure? Do we see that what we have currently, based on the government infrastructures, state data centers or the national data centers, will that be sufficient to handle applications which are not only existing, which will be migrated, but the new large applications which are coming up? The answer is no. The private will have to play a very important role, and it is a complete ecosystem of government and private which will work together to see that this strategy and the implementation roadmap is implemented in the, I would say, the shortest possible time. Because in fact, we all started these discussions in the cloud something like 7 to 8 months back. And we're glad to see that we've actually come to a stage where the reports will be approved in the next week's time or so, and they should be available for everybody to see. Now, if I look at the kind of architecture that we're talking about as a part of the government GI Cloud initiative, in fact, that has been coined as Meghraj by our secretary. It is talking about discrete set of cloud components, national clouds, state clouds, and we have the hybrid clouds. We have public. We also talking about cloud setup by the private, which are dedicated for the government. We're talking about something like empaneling of the cloud service providers in order to ensure that the demand with respect to various cloud services is met, and we are able to provide the kind of agility which is demanded in the cloud environment. Of course, one of the big challenges that we have in front is what we call the data classification and application profiling. We need to ensure, while you have a level playing field, we also need to see what are our low-risk applications, what are our mid-risk applications, what are the high-risk applications, and what are the kind of security norms that we put in place to address. So, and then how do we move into this direction? So, in order to address all this, governance is extremely important. We have a complete governance mechanism that we've laid out as a part of the report. One of the important aspects is what we call the Architecture Management Office. We see that standards, policies, guidelines, frameworks are going to be the heart of this whole initiative, supplemented by the necessary regulatory and compliance requirements. Whether you talk about standards with respect to the new IT procurements, the policies, guidelines, whether you talk about, even today, if I try and see the pricing, the cloud pricing which is available, that's not uniform for any state government today. If they want to see what is it that I get from cloud service provider A and B, there are different. So you need to templatize and see that everybody is providing you the necessary costing, pricing. So there is a requirement in terms of the necessary guidance which the government has to give. Even in terms of, if you try to see the IT infrastructure augmentation in the existing infrastructure which has been laid out by the government, there are no clear norms. But if I want to provide services like infrastructure within 30 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it is, I need to have clear-cut policies in place. So I need to build that clear ecosystem in place. So we do see there is an important role even on the contractual agreements when we talk about even on the privacy of the data. In fact, today there are a lot of things which are addressed as a part of the IT Act, but then there is a need to come up with a Privacy Act. The work in this direction has started. We know that in tits and bits we have 43A and a lot of those things are being addressing. But in terms of when you start talking about cloud, what then the privacy and security, especially when we move into the cross-border, they will have to be addressed very clearly, and we will have to come up with clear best practices, norms which have to be followed by whoever is providing cloud services to the government in the country. And when we talk about a discrete cloud environment, what I see is to simplify the whole delivery mechanism, there is a need to come up with a single services cloud directory, I would say, where whoever is a part of the GI cloud will publish their services, whether it is infrastructure, whether it's software, whole lot of new services also, virtual desktop. We're trying to see security as a service, whole lot of new services are going to come up. So, but they all should be published at one place. Today, since we have interoperability issues, I see this to begin with as a place where this is a repository which is making the services available. But tomorrow, I'm sure this is going to land up into a provisioning also, when we are able to talk between one cloud solution provider to another at the management layer, not at the virtualization only. Apart from that, if you see other important aspects you need to see is a showcasing. There is a great need in the country to showcase the various government departments the power of the cloud, what you can get if you, a place where the departments can bring their application, they can see the performance functionality in different cloud environments. There is a need for having a strong international collaboration. There is a need to try and see how the basic capacity building and awareness in the country can be brought about. So we're talking about something like Center of Excellence for Cloud Computing, which is another important area which we will have to address. We also have something on the cloud utilities per se. While private is going to continuously play a very important role, right from the managed cloud service providers to setting up dedicated clouds to being empaneled to give various cloud services, and also in the design and development of the cloud-ready applications. So there is a requirement to have something like the cloud store or the app store per se. And so we are, in fact, we are already working with NIC in this direction. And we do intend to see as a part of the entire cloud strategy, we are talking about the app stores which have to be set up across the country. And in fact, we've closely studied the UK's cloud store, which is, I think, a very good example in terms of trying to see how it can be a marketplace, giving services not only on infrastructure, but even on consultancy and all. So, and bringing clear transparency in terms of publishing the cost and other things. So those learnings will have to be seen how they can be used as best practices and learn from the success of others. So what I see, of course, so what we are seeing is while the strategy is trying to touch on various components in terms of the national clouds, in terms of the state clouds, Center of Excellence, app stores, and a lot of initiatives in the capacity building. And we do see, of course, empowered committees, expert committees, set up, architecture management office to take this whole initiative forward. I actually see private, of course, working very closely, and a lot of inputs that we got from the private in terms of being a part of the governance and in terms of being able to participate in this entire cloud initiative upfront has kind of been, they have been extremely valuable inputs, I would say. And so there is, I would say, of course, as far as challenges are concerned, we are slightly better off to begin with because we have our own infrastructures in place. And today the interoperability issues are helping us in the sense that we are kind of going to start with more of location-based cloud services, I would say, because you're augmenting the national data centers, the state data centers per se and all. And so the security to begin with would be, you need to have dynamic security, zones, policies, VM between VMs, end user. So those are which can be easily tackled with the technology and the awareness. But as we move around and we have a private community also, so we are also going to work very closely with the counter group in terms of trying to see data segregation, data location issues, the legal issues, and which we will have to parallelly look at. And I think in the next 1 year time, we are going to see a lot happening. And we do have a lot of DVCs and all with the US, trying to learn from them and trying to see how we can fast track. And let me tell you, India is not far behind. We've actually seen what countries across the world are doing. And we see that because what Indian government has taken up in terms of the cloud initiative and taking it to a policy and strategy. I was only seeing Australia today has the strategy and in a very sporadic way. And the cloud implementation roadmap is just starting. So that way I would say I think this is just the right time for us, all of us to work together, try and get as many inputs as possible and see that cloud actually reigns, and it reigns e-governance services across the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable inputs. Cloud will definitely reign this time. She talked about awareness of cloud, marketing of cloud, privacy and security is definitely an issue nowadays. Now I would like to call Dr. Neeta Verma, Deputy Director General, National Informatics Center, DAITI, Government of India. She will talk about the role of NIC in cloud computing and the various challenges and the opportunities lying in cloud computing. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening. While Renu has set a very good background to tell you where we are and where we are going to be in the year to come, let me just give you more of a practitioner's perspective, and I would like to further prove him wrong that we are not that behind. We are even today doing a lot of cloud. Maybe you don't do all that fanfare. So before I go to that, to me, cloud computing is not only about the technology. It's a paradigm shift, the way we have been working so far. We've been doing we have spent our life doing internet and client server computing. Now suddenly you talk about the cloud. We've been always doing those physical servers. This is my server. Where is it there? That the belonging, that feeling over there. Suddenly you have all virtual machines. So it's not technology. This is a lot of mindset also which is supported. The whole procurement of the model of the government, which has been established over years and years, now needs a kind of a leapfrog change. That ICT procurement from buying machines, giving 5 years contract, and then keeping it to now pay as you use. The whole model needs to be transformed. And above all, the management strategy. We always used to have servers, we used to have server admins, and these are kind of set of people, highly skilled people, who used to manage these servers, and users have to be simply asking for services. So from where now you're talking about self-service, will become a fundamental ingredient of any cloud implementation. So it's more than what a technology is, and we need to perhaps address all those things if we really need a successful, a vibrant cloud working in the country, whether it is government or country as a whole. All these things you must have seen in many forums. Cloud has a lot of takeaways, a lot of positive things. But from government point of view, I've been working with government, working with these data centers for over 15 years now. To me, what is really important for the government from the cloud perspective? Well, cost and efficiency will all continue to be there, which is what, but what is unique with the government setup? First thing is, government applications by their basic nature are applications which get into peaks and surges at a periodic. They're pretty periodic. You look at the union budget, it's only 2 days in a year where there's a lot of load on that particular. You look at exam results. Each exam results only 2 days, 3 days. You look at any policy announcement. You look at tax filing. It's only a month or something where you have, or maybe the last day when you really need the bandwidth and systems to perform. So you really need a system wherein you have an elasticity where you could scale up or scale out or scale up your infrastructure for a specific time of a day, 2 day, or a month maybe, and then again get back to this. So this kind of elasticity, this kind of a scalability was earlier not so easy. It was there. We had all those load balancers, and we've been doing exam results for over, I'll tell you, for over now 15 years we've been doing almost all school exam results we do. And they are the applications which will always be the exam result one day. Everybody wants to see their result in 5 minutes. Nobody wants to wait beyond. So there is 1 lakh or 100,000 children, or sometimes 1,200,000 children. Everybody has to. So you need to cater to those 5 minutes. And in India, as you know, these results carry a lot of weightage, a lot of anxiety with parents, with children, and with schools as well. And it's really changed a lot. The whole system has, whole education and exam results system. Today, almost every school board in India releases its result on this thing. So that's a kind of scalability or elasticity you need. Second thing, in government, you need, whenever you have any policy or you want to launch any service, you need to do it fast. You don't want to get into this procurement cycle of 1 month, 2 months, like Renu was saying. Sometimes it takes a year by the time you really put the whole infrastructure. So that kind of a time is not there. And e-governance is not only very straightforward. It needs a lot of political support. It needs a lot of, so the timing of the launch of application has to be right. A timing of application, and their infrastructure should not show you down. You should have infrastructure readily available to go. So that quick deployment is something where you just take it, is there. And thirdly, which I am a very strong believer, that once we provide this kind of an infrastructure where you at hardly any cost and without putting those nodes and nodes are able to take infrastructure for a month or 2 months, a lot of innovation we are going to see into these e-governance, where people will be able, supposing he's thought of an application, he wants to launch and see, let's say, 1 month. It is not possible. You have to put in whole project report, you have to take 10 approvals, you have to take funding here and there. And at the end, so it becomes a kind of a deterrent for many. But if you have a place where you can hire infrastructure from a government setup, let's say for a month, and just do this experiment, there will be a whole lot of experiments here. And this is what is e-governance. E-governance in this country, we cannot copy from any country. We are a unique country. We are such a large democracy, and we have whole lot of, I should not say complications, whole lot of challenges of language, literacy. So we have to have our own models of delivering e-governance service. And there we need innovation. We need innovation from industry, innovation from government. And for that, cloud really becomes a platform to enable that in a very beautiful manner. Renu has already talked in detail about government coming up with GI cloud. So while Renu and her team are basically figuring out and trying to give these documents to us, so we thought as a preamble to this, let us, as I said, cloud is not only technology, there is a whole lot of ecosystem around it which needs to be ready to use these things. So as a preamble to that, we have begun a kind of a cloud project in discussion with Renu also in one of our data centers. The understanding was, the basic genesis was, there was a need, there was a demand for cloud services, and also we also need to gain an experience then when you run a cloud which is countrywide, what kind of challenges or what kind of various issues will come across. What is the best way? Governance is an issue. the whole framework of delivering services an issue. So early on, if we gain experience, that can be given feedback to the policy, and that's how we evolve. So early this year, we had actually set up, and this is our data centers, and how it also will help, because we as NIC are having national data centers and some small state setups, and also associated with state data centers. So practically, if you look at it, 90 to 95% of government presence on the web, which is state governments, central governments, or even district administration, or even today panchayats. Their websites, their portals are being hosted in our data centers. Quite a few major e-governance applications under any GP or otherwise are also being delivered through our data centers. So we have a unique situation of touch base with a large units of government who are getting into these ambitions. So we thought, if at this time we start offering cloud services, we'll be able to connect with these people, and we'll be able to get feedback, the kind of requirements we will have in our country when we implement cloud, and the kind of challenges we may have in our setup. So we had recently set up a large data center at 60,000 square feet with 15,000 square feet of energized space. It's a green data center, environment friendly, and one of the largest government data center in India. This is just to give you a kind of the scale of this. This data center has a 6 megawatt substation dedicated to this particular service, completely monitored, and this data center is spread across 5 different levels. 2 levels below the ground and 3 levels above the ground. This has a capacity of 480 racks to be precise, which to our mind will be able to take, even as today's ICT infrastructure, which is available, over 30,000 virtual machines we should be able to do. 2 petabyte of storage we already have, and today evening only I was coming, someone told me we need to procure more. We have already reaching 80% of its utilization. So that's the speed at which you sort of grow. So, and this data center today we have around 200. This is something we began sometime in January. I think we had approvals, and also in last 3 months or whatever, we had 200 e-government projects which have moved to this cloud service. What we said, now any request which comes to us, we offer them cloud first, even if they have procured their hardware. Because they are mostly, our people are all government. So we say, don't worry, you have hardware, you give the hardware, we will subsume it into the cloud which we have, and then offer you better service than what your infrastructure would have given you. And that is how, we have a whole setup of group which does this counseling with each department, and to sort of influence upon them that why should you move to cloud, instead of having, people will come with only, one server and trying to do a whole application. I said, what will you do with one application? It's something as if, without any virtualization. So and let's try explaining, and it has been very positive, though there's a team which works around it. We have over 2,000 virtual machines already carved on it. And as of today, we are basically offering infrastructure and platform as a service. It has a self-service portal in a limited fashion. And though it has a self-service portal, but so far when we are dealing with these government departments, just trying to tell experience, mostly they still are not really very keen to take management to themselves. They would like still to be managed by a set of people who are maybe the admins, which we already had, or maybe if they have some IT agency, which is their partner implementation of the product. That is how it's been happening. There is always, between the cloud and the end user, there has to be, at least if I see in some time to come, there has to be another agency, which is a middle level agency, or whom you call brokers or whatever, who will be helping you managing these self-service portals or doing it. So that's how it's working as of today. Another couple of months, we are planning to move it to a full-fledged cloud services. Maybe sometime early July is our target as of today. And wherein not only infrastructure and platform, we are trying, today we have around 6 to 7 platforms we offer, but we planning to scale it to some 20-25 different platforms which we'll be offering as a platform as a service. And very closely working with the people who have developed softwares and people who are getting into ops stage to find out which are the applications which are ready and perhaps can be immediately launched as software as a service. Virtual desktop is in huge demand. So in a limited way, we will, maybe a beta of this we'll launch in July. We are trying to customize, looking at these experiences of our users where they really find these interfaces which come from the commercial softwares and interfaces a little tough and challenging to really interface with them. So we are trying to customize using the SDKs provided by those people and closely working with the solution providers or with those agencies who are owning this virtualized or cloud solution to come up with highly customized solution. There are two reasons for this. We need much simpler interface. Second is that we have, being government, we have a whole lot of security requirements. One has to go through a number of audits and processes. And we had to integrate those processes also into. We didn't want to give them 7 different platforms, go to this URL into. So we're trying to get everything together at one place so that at single interface they'll be able to get service. So that's something we're trying to do. And generally when, see, as an IC, we are a part of government, and when we are trying to give them services, it generally comes to us as a budget from our department. We often are not charging them for doing these services. But what we have felt now, though we are not charging, but let's at least bring, because see, with even servers, it was a kind of a thing, but when we give virtual machines, and that too I give it to you without any cost, there is a fear, or there is a thing that large amount of these virtual machines may lie underutilized or things. So we thought, let's introduce a concept of notional costing. We will, because now we have a software through which it's very easily I'll be able to handle this. So at least indicate to each user that this is the amount of cost, worth cost services I'm offering it to. So that's a kind of a new thing we'll start, just to make everyone aware, and also give us also a good picture that, you know, when we are investing into all this infrastructure, how well it is being utilized. In the last 4 months or so, though we initiated cloud now, but in terms of virtual machines and VMs and all those things, we have been doing for almost a year and a half now. So there's a lot of experience that time, which now we moved to cloud and gave it to self-service kind of a mode. Our experience with these departments, with 200 odd projects which we have migrated in the last 3 months or so, has been that as far as private cloud is concerned, our government departments are pretty ready. I have never seen any kind of a resistance coming, as long as you are able to work with, you have an advocacy team who works with them, impresses upon them what kind of positives you have from this kind of question, they are pretty ready. But what is perhaps needed and what is important is the person who's providing these services, the data center service providers, the role what they play, the credibility of that organization, and the trustworthiness is going to be very, very crucial. Very often, that is, when you are giving this application and he's telling you or she's telling you it's going to be in a cloud, there's a whole lot of trust factor into it. And this trust index of that particular organization has to be high who's trying to offer these services. Our key concerns have been, which in fact, while we were trying to discuss this project, where Secretary was also highlighted, one is in any case is interoperability. Because though we have teams who are working with Renu and all who are looking into open source stack solutions, and we are very positively looking into this, but as of today, for a production class kind of setups, we have a lot of these commercial solutions also. And being into government, it's perhaps not possible to be stuck to one vendor for a long time. So when you have this number of solutions coming from number of different agencies, how do you do interoperability? So this project, this is also, we already have 2 solution providers who are, across this, we have spread these virtual machines. And we're very closely trying to see, in fact, trying to extract, because very often when we talk to them, they have not really encountered these kind of questions. So it takes time, but I think it's learning for them, and it's more of an input to us. Wherein we're trying to see that to what in the present setup, while I know there are large number of initiatives. Today morning I had a webcast with some Cloud Innovation Council, and they told me that large number of inter-cloud protocols and things are being worked. But by the time they see light of the day, it will be some time. But till then, how do we really manage? So we are very closely trying to talk to both of these service providers, and solution providers, and see how best can we integrate, or how best can we really interoperate between these 2 solutions. picture has, we still have to come to some kind of a conclusion. The study is still going on, but as of today, it's not that bad as it always looks, that interoperability is a huge issue. It's perhaps not that bad as it looks to me. Manageability. I feel manageability is the key how you're going to work into cloud. And manageability has to be addressed from 3 dimensions. You definitely need to have management softwares to help you manage when you have 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 virtual machines. You need to have some kind of a software to assist you doing this. But more to software, you need a skilled resources. You perhaps need much more skilled resources to really help you doing these kind of things, to help you manage these things more efficiently. And largely, you surely need some kind of a governance structure, some kind of a strict policy in place. Otherwise, management of this cloud tomorrow will become an issue. So that is something has to be addressed from the very beginning. Security is an issue, but I personally feel it's more of a configuration issue. It's how well you design your applications and how well you configure your infrastructures. The large amount of security basically gets determined from that setup, especially when we are into private cloud kind of a setup. Another thing which kind of has come to my notice while we were trying to do this, we've been always saying that cloud infrastructure, cloud is a cost-saving solution. But I'm trying to study it actually in a scientific manner. See, while it's a good this thing that one machine you'll be able to split into 10 machines and do virtualization, and then that's how you save costs. But actually speaking, when you divide them into 10 machines, there are a whole lot of other softwares which you got to invest into it, right from your virtualization software, your cloud management agent, your antivirus agents, your backup agents, your operations automation orchestration agents, and the whole lot of agents, and even the basic licensing of these softwares. There's still large number of software providers, the conventional database or OS providers, who have actually not yet tuned their costing to be friendly to this thing. So this is my fear, but I cannot, that overall cost, when you put all those things, because if it's a development kind of a station where you don't need to put all these monitoring agents and all, perhaps fine. But when you have a production class setup where you need to put all those security, monitoring, management agents and make it a full, and then this disaster recovery again, the replication, all those things, cost increases significantly. I have given someone, and I have a team who's working on to actually study what is the overall cost we get and where is. But I have a very strong hunch that that's where industry has to look into it. You cannot have a cost per VM which is universal. When I'm trying to do for a small setups of a VM which 1 CPU, 2 vCPU, and then if I have a VM which has, let's say, 20 vCPUs, you can't give me a same VM, every cost per VM the same way, because it actually sometimes becomes that it's not a viable, cost-effective solution for these small VMs. So perhaps there is a need for industry to look into it, at least 2 categories of costing, small VMs and big VMs, to make it really a cost-effective solution, the way we all have been perceiving cloud. And lastly, the service quality. Service quality is going to be an issue, and once we move on to cloud, people do not have their individual servers. Now they are largely dependent, they're completely dependent on the cloud service provider. So you as a cloud service provider, the responsibility goes by a factor of multiplication high, because now it's your responsibility to run their business. Any piece in the jigsaw puzzle, if goes wrong and the services go down and you're not able to bring him down, whatever, because we have seen practically, you keep planning for your DR and you keep planning for your BCP, but when it actually comes to DR and BCP, quite often you face a situation that this bolt was not fitted properly, or this bolt is missing, and though DR cannot happen. This is something which happens, as you practice, as you mature and new things. So that responsibility also to some extent comes to a cloud service provider, at least cautioning or at least doing this kind of a knowledge transfer with those people who are coming to your own cloud, that this is what 10 things you need to do to finally. So when this team which I have set up within NIC, which I call infrastructure advisory committee. So that team really goes through with these people and understands if what is the requirement for your service to be up, and if something happens, what is your fallback, to what extent you need to do. So we need to really look at service quality, but service quality alone cannot happen. It has to be happening with the cooperation of all our users or government departments. So, but it has to be paid attention to. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us with such a thorough presentation. It was really an eye-opener. Now I would like to call Mr. Jeff Gold, CEO and Director of Research, SafeGov. He will tell us about some of the initiatives which SafeGov is taking and the role and challenges of SafeGov. Please.
Okay, my slides. Thank you. It's certainly an honor to follow such distinguished speakers. Renu, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, and Anita. I certainly learned a lot in the last 30 minutes about cloud in India. I'm not really here, obviously, to talk to you about cloud in India. I'm just a visitor. I'm going to try and give you very quickly, and I realize that I'm the last speaker between you and dinner, so I'll try and use your time efficiently. And I'll try and allow some time for questions at the end for all three of us. But I'll try and give you very quickly a brief status report on cloud in the government in the United States, and then I'll talk about some of the policy issues that have arisen from cloud and online privacy regulation in Europe. Before I do that, let me very briefly say what is SafeGov. Don't be misled by the name. We're not part of the government in the United States. Some of you might have thought that. We are a nonprofit organization, and our purpose is, you could say our purpose is to offer advice to governments. There's no guarantee that they listen to us. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We were founded in 2011, and really the historical reason for our creation was as a response to the Obama administration's Cloud First initiative, which has already been alluded to, and I'm sure many of you in the room are familiar with Cloud First. I'll sort of very briefly go through that history. There was a very well-known man in the United States, Vivek Kundra, who was the federal CIO under Obama. President Obama gave Mr. Kundra his marching orders. And I don't think President Obama, I mean, he's a good politician. I don't think he personally is very interested in technology. It just came out the other day that he hates social media, but it doesn't matter. He gave Vivek Kundra marching orders. He said, do something dynamic with the IT infrastructure of the federal government, do something that saves money. So Vivek Kundra produced a very well-known white paper at the end of 2010, which is the Cloud First initiative. And it basically said, as the word suggests, to any federal agency, which is like your large ministries, if you are considering a new IT investment, or if you are considering updating an existing IT investment, you must consider, as a matter of policy, as a matter of mandate from the White House, you must consider cloud first among the alternatives. You may choose something else. You may find that that's not the right solution. And he gave them a deadline. He said by the middle of 2012, each agency, you must have at least 3 applications that are either on the cloud or in the process of moving to the cloud. He didn't say which ones. He had some ideas. He didn't say how much you have to spend on them, but he gave them that top-down mandate. And that was really very important in getting cloud going in the United States. But our organization, SafeGov, safegov.org, and I invite you to visit our website. Everything we do is published on our website, and we have a lot of material up there. We were created because it emerged very early on, exactly as in India, that these large federal agencies, which have a lot of autonomy in the United States, they're kind of like elephants. They're very large, they're hard to move, and they have a mind of their own. And they have a fair amount of autonomy in choosing their IT investments. They're not completely controlled by the central government. They're part of it, but they kind of do what they want. But it very quickly emerged that security and privacy were major concerns and even major obstacles to adoption of cloud services by these agencies. So SafeGov really, we have a lot of sponsors, commercial organizations that are interested in promoting cloud in the public sector. Government, broadly speaking, but also schools and other public sector organizations. So our job is really to develop best practices and learning experiences which address these issues of security and privacy and try and clear the road to cloud in the broader public sector. And as I say, we're not part of the government. We work closely with a number of government agencies in the United States. We spend a lot of time talking to government regulators in Europe. They know everything, and before you even want something, you want a cup of coffee, your virtual servant says, "Sir, would you like a cup of coffee? Would you like Arabica beans? Would you like Robusta beans? What kind of coffee do you want? You want a, Starbucks latte? Are you going to buy a? It will know I want to buy a car. It will know I want to buy a house. It will know I want to go on vacation. It will know I'm really embarrassed about something I did, with a friend 6 months ago. It will know all of that. It will make proposals to me, and I won't have to pay this virtual butler, this virtual servant. This virtual servant will remunerate itself by taking a commission on everything that I buy. I mean, that's basically the model of a Facebook or a Google. I mean, there was a piece of research out of Cambridge University in the UK just a few months ago which showed that the statistical analysis of likes in Facebook allows you, with an 80 to 90% probability of being right, to guess the gender of the person, the age, the political beliefs, the religious beliefs. Are you Christian? Are you Muslim? Are you Hindu? Are you Jewish? What is your financial status? Do you own your own home? You can make all kinds of inferences just by analyzing the pattern of your likes. And same is true of, Google reads your Gmail. They know what websites you're visiting because of the double-click cookies. They can build a very accurate model, and that's what they're doing. It's big data. They know where you are from your cell phone. Apple knows where you are with your iPhone. Google knows where you are with your Android phone. Microsoft might know where you are with your Windows phone. They know all of this about you, and they're making all of these inferences. But the Europeans are saying this business model is legitimate if you tell the consumer what you're doing and if you allow the consumer to say no. Because today, we in the IT industry understand what Facebook and Google are doing, and Twitter is doing the same thing. But the average consumer probably only has a very vague understanding. And I realize I've got about 3 minutes, and then I'll conclude with a video here. The average consumer does not understand really what's going on. I mean, Facebook, Google, all of these services are free, but we all know from Milton Friedman, famous University of Chicago economist, my alma mater, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Okay? So really you are paying, and in the case of these free online services, you're paying in the currency of privacy, you're paying in the currency of information. So what the Europeans are saying is the internet companies, especially the US internet, they have to disclose that bargain. They have to disclose that transaction in a more honest, transparent way than they have until now. And they must allow the consumer to say no, either completely or partially. And now the internet companies have the right to say, well, we're not going to give you this service for free if you don't want to give us your information. Fine, that's a fair transaction. But they have to let the consumer, maybe the consumer would like to have some control over how much they disclose. Maybe the consumer would like to know what Facebook knows about you and maybe say, well, that part, erase that. I don't want you to know that. But this other part is fine. I am buying a car, actually, and I do want to have some good offers. So I'll conclude here with a video from the ACLU, which is the American Civil Liberties Union. And let's see if I can do this right. I think I'll get it. Okay, I'll go to Chrome. Okay, so this before I play this, and the American accent goes by pretty quickly, this is about a man who calls a pizza shop and orders pizza on the phone. And the woman answering the phone says, okay, she's looking at a computer screen, and it turns out she knows a lot more about this man than he realizes. So that, and this is obviously a fictional scenario, but it gives you an indication of what might happen in a worst-case dystopic future. So after this video, which lasts about a minute, I'm going to stop, and we can have questions, or if there are no questions, we can all, go in and have dinner. But up to you.
Pizza Hi, Mary. Yes, I'd like to order.
Is this Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you for calling again, sir. I show your national identification number as 610-204-999-8-45-54610. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I see you live at 736 Montrose Court, but you're calling from your cell phone. Are you at home?
I'm just leaving work, but I'm...
Oh, we can deliver to Bob's Auto Supply. That's at 175 Lincoln Avenue, yes?
No, I'm on my way home. How do you know all this stuff?
We just got wired into the system, sir.
Oh, well, I'd like to order a couple of your double meat special pizzas.
Sure thing. There'll be a new $20 charge for those, sir.
What do you mean?
Sir, the system shows me that your medical records indicate that you have high blood pressure and extremely high cholesterol. Luckily, we have a new agreement with your national health care provider that allows us to sell you double meat pies as long as you agree to waive all future claims of liability.
What?
Do you agree, sir? You can sign the form when we deliver, but there is a charge for processing. The total is $67 even.
$67?
Well, that includes the delivery surcharge of $15 to cover the added risk to our driver of traveling through an orange zone.
I live in an orange zone?
Now you do. Looks like there was another robbery on Montrose yesterday. You could save $48 if you ordered our special Sprout Submarine Combo and picked it up yourself. Comes with tofu sticks. Those are very tasty, sir. Good value, too.
But I want double meat.
Well, I'm sure you can afford the $67 then. You just bought those tickets to Hawaii. They weren't cheap, eh? Oh, but I see you checked out the budget beach bum at the library last week. Up to you, sir.
All right. I'll get the Sprout subs.
Good choice, sir. Gotta watch that waist if you're hitting the beach, eh? 42 inches. Wow. Man, I'd say tofu and sprouts is like required.
That's how much?
Just between you and me, there's a $3 off coupon in this month's Total Men's Fitness magazine. Your wife Betty subscribes to that, right? Anyhow, clip that and it's $19.99 even. Whoa, looks like you maxed out on all your credit cards. Bring cash, okay?
Want to stop this from happening?
Okay. So, so we have time for questions, not just for me, but for Renu and Anita, for the previous speakers. If there are any questions, if not, do I see any takers? Okay, please. Cloud first.
On putting three applications on cloud, one of the objectives, because any mandate has to be driven by certain objectives. One of the objectives which I could gather was, of course, the tight budget or optimization of the cost which federal government was spending on IT. What was the second objective? It can't be only one objective.
Of course, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there's two answers to that. One is that when Vivek Kundu wrote this document, in some sense it was a political as well as a technological initiative, and in some sense it was designed for the way it would be perceived as well as for the way it would be implemented. But nevertheless, I mean, he was certainly no fool, and he very well understood the benefits of cloud because he'd been previously the CIO of Washington, D.C., and so he really did he did a careful review of what the benefits were, and it would really be what Renu and Anita said. Am I pronouncing it correctly? I hope. Pardon me. It was the traditional benefits that we've all heard about cloud, which is scalability, flexibility, adaptability, pay-as-you-go, the ability to take risks by starting up IT projects quickly without having to buy a lot of infrastructure. I mean, you can go and review his document. It's still on the White House website, even though he's moved on. He's now working for Salesforce.com, I think. So that's a sort of, that would be the answer. More questions?
Hello. Very good evening. I am Rahul Jain from DSCI. You said that in the US, the clouds may not be hosted outside US, but in the cloud first policy, and we have gone through that, I didn't find any specific mention of that, right? So that's first. And also would like to know Madam Renu's view on clouds being hosted outside India for government usage, maybe for non-trivial applications.
Right. So you're absolutely right. Cloud First said absolutely nothing about the geographical location of cloud services. And indeed, in most cases, U.S. law does not require. I mean, it does for things like Defense Department, for intelligence agencies, but really, So whose fault? I mean, how did this happen? Really, in some ways, I blame Google, because Google was the first to offer a government cloud. And they probably did it because they knew that they had a credibility issue being an internet advertising company. So they wanted to get the government business to say, okay, government, we'll build you a cloud. And unfortunately, many of the U.S. federal agencies have accepted this offer and demanded that the other vendors do the same, and the other vendors are doing the same. But actually, the law does not require them in most cases to do it. So maybe Renu can answer for.
See, there are two things. One is my view and one is the government's view. But let me tell you one. As far as having the data hosted and using the public clouds, even for low risk kind of an application, there are a couple of things before, I mean, this can be put up in a concrete way by the government. I mean, there's nothing that's closed from the policy's perspective. But as I said in my initial talk, that we do have two groups. One of them which is looking into the legal and regulatory and the cross-border. So that group definitely, they are working, and we are awaiting the report and the inputs of that group, which will be fed into this particular. That's one important aspect that I think will give us kind of answer as to how do we take it forward. But even, so you know, because I do not know way back if you've seen, you may not have, even MHA, Neeta can correct me also, the guidelines which are available from MHA that the government website cannot be hosted outside India is what's available. I mean, that's the level at which initially it's. So I think there is a whole lot of I mean, concerns and things which the other group is looking at to, I mean, address this data allocation. And as far as GI cloud is concerned, definitely whatever comes up, and the policy doesn't really restrict that kind of a thing. Thank you. I also have a question. But if
Please.
See, you talked about US using basically cloud email of the Google or those from the collaboration point of view. My question is, while the US trying to use it, well, the UK is quite concerned on the online privacy and those things they're trying to. What about the US? Because it's not a low risk also. If you have your government emails, everything available on a public cloud, there's a whole lot of documents as a part of the email. Right. And you showed your slide which talked about Google and all. They are into the advertising as the data mining is definitely. So which means there's a concern. How is that being addressed? Well, you said the FISMA and all is there. But in reality, I mean, are the departmental users given that kind of an option? I mean, right. Because I lately somewhere, maybe you could help me in knowing this, I heard Google is coming out with something like a single privacy policy, right. Which is, so that also becomes a big issue if that is not adaptable to the, and these are some concerns even the UK is having per se. Right. So maybe...
Those are all very good questions. I'll try and sort of pick them apart. For the Google privacy policy, that what you referred to is what they did last year, where they collapsed all of the privacy policies from their many different products into a single policy. And basically, it was an admirable effort. I mean, they were trying to be more explicit, but it also had some negative features, because essentially, it gave them the right to take information from any of their services, not just Gmail, but YouTube or their ad serving, DoubleClick, and to combine it to build a bigger profile of you and to target you with ads. And again, as a consumer, that may be a fair, they have very good internet services, so as a consumer, that might be a fair bargain. But if a government agency or a school contracts with them, it's not such a good bargain. So the question, the European Union immediately launched an investigation of this Google privacy policy from last March, and actually that investigation is still going on. Basically, the two sides, Google and the European Union, have, like that, they have not been able to agree on Google says what we're doing is fine, we don't understand why you're bothering us, and the Europeans say, actually, you're not obeying European law and you need to change. So it isn't clear how that's going to wind up. There's probably going to be some fines issued against Google in the next few months. What happens after the fines is unknown at this time. But in the United States, if you go back, first of all, the 500,000 email seats, both Microsoft and Google, this is not the Department of Defense, this is not the Pentagon, this is not the CIA, this is not the White House. These are the agencies like the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Transportation, which are using these email services. And you do have some examples, this issue of what about the malicious insider risk in the data center in one of these organizations. So there's really two answers to that the government is pursuing. In high risk, in applications that require a lot of protection, and for example, law enforcement, SafeGov in the United States has been involved in helping local police departments adopt cloud computing. And I'll just take a minute to explain one example. A couple of years ago, 3 years ago, you had the city of Los Angeles that contracted with Google for 30,000 email seats. About half of these were for ordinary city workers, water department, parks department, things like that. The other half was for the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD. The half that was for ordinary city workers, that deployment went very well. They saved a lot of money. They were able to shut down their servers in their data center and move the staff to some other function. And they went from $200 a year to $50 a year per user. But unfortunately, the 15,000 seats for the LAPD, that part had to be canceled because in the United States, every police department, it's local, but they have to access the national database, the crime database of the FBI, which has all of the fingerprints and the criminal history. And the FBI has very strict rules. If you have an IT system connected to our database, it must comply with certain rules, and especially not just the technical rules like, malware scanning and all of the obvious technical requirements, but also the FBI requires that the data center personnel undergo strict background checks. Are they criminal? Are they trustworthy? And Google, and to be fair, it wasn't just Google, but the other cloud providers did not meet those requirements at that time. So that's why Los Angeles, to great embarrassment, had to cancel the deployment to the LAPD. And actually, the CIO ended up losing her job because of that. Partly because she should have known, and Google should have known that they didn't meet these requirements. But so our job at SafeGov, we organized an event with the FBI in January. So basically, the solution to this, and these vendors are beginning to comply. The solution is expensive for the vendors and a little bit painful for the vendors, but the solution is to have very rigorous background checks on all of the personnel employed in the data centers who might have logical or physical access to the servers. And that, Microsoft has done that. Google has not done it yet, but I think they will. They have no choice if they want to serve the law enforcement market in the U.S., which is quite big. It's probably potentially 500,000 seats, ultimately. But there's another possible solution, which doesn't take the place of background checks of the data center personnel. But that other solution is encryption, where you have a number of new startup companies funded by Silicon Valley venture capitalists, and they're a very interesting company named CipherCloud. I think it's spelled C-I-P-H-E-R Cloud, CipherCloud. Some Indian entrepreneurs, well-known, you can look it up on the web, ciphercloud.com. They and a couple of their competitors, there are half a dozen of these companies, what they do is they have basically a box that sits inside your firewall and that encrypts all of the email that goes to Office 365 or to Google Apps. And so the email that's on the Google server is encrypted, and you have the keys, not Google. So even if there is a malicious insider, the malicious insider can't get access to the email. So this is a new technology answer to the security problem. It's not yet, the policy and the regulations in the U.S. are not yet in place to make the federal agencies comfortable with this. They're still checking it out to see, does it really satisfy our requirements? But it's a possible answer in addition to this very expensive process of background checks of data center personnel. So that's a partial answer. Now, we think at SafeGov, we think that this encryption in some cases is a good answer to the data sovereignty problems. I mean, I'm sure the government of India is never going to send its sensitive defense or intelligence information outside of the borders of India. But you, like the US, you have some government ministries where it might be efficient to have it reside in a data center in Singapore, maybe owned by Wipro, who knows, or you know, in Dublin, in Ireland. And maybe encryption could be an answer, as well as background checks on the data center personnel.
I am Dr. V.K. Sehgal. My question is to Dr. Neeta Verma. Is there any, actually belong to BPCL under Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, is there any PSU or ministry putting their application to cloud in India?
If you're talking of a, hi. Yeah, if you're talking of a private cloud, that means which is set up within an IC data centers. As I told you, there are around 200 projects which we have moved on to cloud in the last 1 quarter. A lot of panchayat information systems which are coming up, even the panchayat enterprise finance and all, that all has moved on to. Quite a few government, dial.gov we run the service, that runs from the cloud as of today. Data.gov, which is our open data program, that runs quite a few, around 200 and odd projects which is running from the private cloud which we run as NIC operate.
Maybe we can take one more question, I think.
Jeff, hi. This is Anubhuti from Wipro. Here.
Oh, there you are.
My question is that, you know, you've spoken all about cloud and how federal US government deals with it. But I would be very keen to understand what is your policy initiative towards the disaster management. Thanks.
Okay, so I can answer that only indirectly. It's not SafeGov being, you know, we kind of have tunnel vision. We sort of see cloud everywhere. But, I mean, my short answer would be, I mean, there's two aspects. One is, I mean, cloud, obviously, if you have one of these large cloud providers with many redundant data centers, which they all do now, you have a form of built-in disaster recovery with that redundancy of data centers being outside your own organization. Having said that, you have to ask, what is their disaster backup plan? And that, I think, I mean, I'm not going to give a long answer, go into technical details, but I think that one of the benefits of dealing with these very large vendors is because they are so large, they have very sophisticated infrastructure, architecture, and expertise, and, I mean, this is a cop-out, but they, in general, are able to provide for in many ways, better disaster recovery and protection than even a large corporation which doesn't have the scale of a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon. That's not a good answer. I realize that, I admit, but it's the best I can do for now. Should we conclude on that? Ravi, I don't know what the... Okay. To Renu and Anita also. Okay.
So, thank you all, and may I request you all to join us for a dinner, and you can still interact with our speakers here.